I believe I've made the lightest guide scope ever, as far as I can tell. Not only that, it's as cheap as chips, and I've made a few variants. Stay tuned and I'll show you. I'm Nugsy, this is Cheapass-tro. A good while back now, I made a video on my first guiding setup. I utilised my 9x50 finder scope and paired it with a bargain buy, which was a SV Boney SV305 planetary camera. It took a long time for me to get into guiding, and it's only because of that bargain I ended up doing so. And I was pleased to be in the game. However, you may have noticed that I never did show guiding graphs at the time because it didn't really improve matters, if I'm being honest. And there's nothing wrong with the guiding was fine. It's the weight. Fact of the matter is, even though I had tested it all and got 3-minute subs, a lot of those were throwaway just because the scope was just way too heavy for my little EQ5 mount. A problem I've been dealing with right from the start. Now the EQ5 has a payload capacity limit of 10 kilos for visual, and they say 50 to 70% of that to be used for astrophotography. After applying the guiding gear to that rig, I went over 100%. It was slightly over 10 kilos. The scope itself was 8.8 kilos, or 88% of the payload. But then adding the guiding gear to it added over a kilogram. I couldn't believe it when I weighed it. A kilogram being 2.2 pounds, by the way. It's like strapping a big bag of sugar or flour to the back of an already heavy scope. Since then, I actually purchased a lighter scope in the form of the Skywatcher 130 PDS, and this brought me down within 60% of the capacity limit of my mount. So I was happy with that and basically stopped using the 200p. But I'm now renovating it with a look to using it again. But I couldn't go strapping that 1 kilo of weight on the back of it and hoping to get any decent results. I had to come up with something lighter. As is mostly the case with me, it took me a long time to actually come up with a solution. It's not coming up with a solution, it's coming up with the money for the solution. And I took advantage of an Amazon sale and bought myself SV Boney's SV165 mini guide scope. It's a 30mm aperture, 120mm focal length guide scope that pretty much matches ZWO's offering, but they charge twice the price. Normally comes in a little over £50. I got it for £38 in a sale, so had to snap it up. And I've got to say, it's a lovely looking little scope. Nice little aluminium design. The red on it would appeal to ZWO users, no doubt, although it doesn't fit my colour scheme. So, what does this thing weigh in at? Let's put it on the scales and see. Now I'll be weighing this with the SV305 camera attached to it, which itself weighs in at 128 grams. Most of the weighings I do throughout this video will include the camera, and mostly will also include the dew heater. I haven't got a dew heater for this SV165. So it now weighs in at 467 grams. That's the 165 and 305 from SV Boney. That's a little shade over a pound, which is basically about half the weight I was running, or a little less than half. So that's gotta be my answer, right? Maybe, maybe not. You see, there's this thing that you read on the internet that says that you should match your guiding gear to your imaging gear. And this one might be a little outside that match for my 200p. It's perfectly good for my 130 PDS. And to decide that, if you just go on to astronomytools.net or com, whichever, I'll put the link down below, and enter the details of your main scope and imaging camera, that will spit back a few figures at you, but the one you're interested in is this one. And on my setup, with the 200p and my Canon 450D camera, it gives me a resolution of 1.05 arc seconds per pixel. Now let's not get bogged down with what that means. Just remember the figure. You then do the same thing with your Guidescope and guide camera. And the figure that it spits back for your guiding gear should be 2 or 3 times that of your imaging gear, up to a maximum of 4 times, and mine is a little over 4 times. So it may still work well, it might not. I've yet to test it. As I said earlier, I've not been using the 200p since I bought the 130 PDS. According to those that say the ideal would be like 2 or 3 times, I should go for a longer focal length on my Guidescope, which means I should be using the 9x50 on my 200p. That itself has a focal length of 180mm, which is going to bring it into that happy bracket. So I started thinking, how can I shed some fat from that 9x50 setup? And since I've just got a 3D printer, it seemed a perfect opportunity to get printing some lighter gear. I was thinking along the lines of printing a dovetail and the bracketry for it, and bringing some weight off it by doing that. And then I started wondering about the tube itself. It's a steel tube on that 9x50 finder scope. Surely, if I could print that in plastic and get away with it, I could get myself a fairly light scope. So I did a bit of a deep dive into Google, see if anyone else is 3D printing Guidescopes, and came up with nothing. 3D printed telescopes, yes. But for a Guidescope, I came up with nothing. So I just thought, sod it, give it a go. And I threw myself into Tinkercad and learned it, because it was the first I was using this. And I ended up designing and printing a complete setup for the guiding. It's the dovetail with the scope and dew shield all together, basically. And I would just insert the lens from the 9x50 finder scope into this new lighter plastic setup. And it basically just replaces that big metal affair I had up on top. Now, this is a very basic and very simple design. There's no focuser to speak of. So to focus this, I literally have to move the camera in and out of its fitting, which then has a little clamp screw to hold it in place. So it can be a little bit awkward, a little bit fiddly, because you've got to sort of wiggle it back and forth to get focus, but you can get focus quite easily with it. So it's no hardship as far as I'm concerned. I painted the inside of this, no, in fact I flocked the inside of this one. I painted the dew shield and, I painted the whole thing, but then I vinyl wrapped as well to give it a white finish. Put a couple of nice little stickers on there. And that there is ready to go. And I had tested that and it worked just fine. I didn't actually guide on it, I was just testing it because next thing, the SV165 turned up. But this thing, as I said, it works, it's ready to go. Just a strap on the back of the 200p when that's all renovated. And I even did a little dew heater thing to clip onto it, which just utilises some wire going back and forth on the inside of it. I've some flocking material around the inside of that for a nice comfy fit on there, and that also works. And just to hold this in your hand, it feels like nothing. So let's put it on the scales and see how it compares with the 1030 gram weight of the original metal version. Oh, we're down to 427 grams. 15.1 ounces, just under a pound in American money. Wow, that is actually lighter than the SV165 mini guide scope with the camera and no dew heater. So I think I have a worthwhile solution for the 200p here. At just 427 grams inclusive. Let's not forget that 128 of those grams is in the camera itself. So yes, the SV165 arrived and I put it together and it's a lovely little thing, but even though it's a mini guide scope, it now feels heavy already to me. So next thing, and I just can't help myself, I'm a tinkerer by nature, you can't blame me. I was looking at ways to reduce weight of the SV165, basically doing the same to it. So I found myself back in Tinkercad, making a tube for the SV165 primary lens, just to see. And this one's even simpler. It's designed to fit in the small dovetail clamp that the SV165 would fit in, the finder clamp if you like. Same sort of focusing, you've got to move the camera in and out and then lock it down with a thumb screw. And the dew cap sits on top then of the lens, which is already a good fit in the tube. It's nice and tight, it's not going to come out accidentally. Again, I've blacked inside the tube and vinyl wrapped it and what have you. Terrible vinyl wrap job, I know. I made the little dew heater for it with just heating wire. A short length is all it needs, is just a gentle warming and the pigtail coming off that. So with that and the camera all in situ, what is this thing going to weigh in at? A mere 237 grams. That's only 8.4 ounces. That's shocking. I couldn't believe it. It's like almost half the weight of the SV165 just with a 3D printed tube. So, is that the end of the story? Would I just recommend this and off I go? Absolutely not. And it's not that I just wouldn't recommend it. I like it. It works. I've been testing this SV165 lightweight version for several months with no issue whatsoever. It just works really well. And despite the lack of focuser, it's easy to focus. If you already own a 165 and still need to shed some weight and you have a 3D printer, I think then yes, I'd recommend it. But I wouldn't go buying an SV165 for its lens to do this with. That is just wasteful and an affront to SV Boney, who I do appreciate and respect for putting budget gear out on the market. The SV165 is a superior scope in all aspects except for its weight. So there's no way I could come onto YouTube and recommend you do that. That would be silly. That was just me seeing how light I could go with the fact that I now owned a 30mm lens as well. However, I can recommend this last one. You see, rather than waste a perfectly good SV165, I decided to buy a replacement for that lens. And it says on the site it's a 30mm 30mm aperture, 120 focal length lens, and I found such a lens on eBay £12, that's all. I bought it. It took the slow boat from China to get to me. It took a long time, but when I finally got it, I came to realise that it does not match the dimensions of SV Boney's lens, because that, for some reason, is 38mm, even though they only have a 30mm aperture at the end of the scope. The lens itself is 38mm, so I've had to readjust my print and bring that down to size to fit this new 30mm lens. It's slightly narrower, slightly shorter, but much the same guide scope. The lens itself, it says it's multi-coated. It doesn't look nice and green like SV Boney's, so we'll see. But I have been able to focus this on stars. I've not yet put it to a test with actual guiding. Okay, this is an addendum after recording my voiceover. That's my mini 30 by 120 guide scope, and I'm just under testing, and I'm nowhere near polar aligned, so you know it's not looking good. I keep losing connection to the camera, so that's not looking good, but it's working. It's guiding at just 1 second. I have now what's got to be the lightest and cheapest guide scope that I'm aware of. It is a mere 224 grams, including the 128 gram camera, which means the scope itself, or the scope and dew heater, is a mere 96 grams. And the lens cost me £12, plus whatever 3D printing gear, and you know, I've got a 30mm thumb screw in there as well. So we're definitely under £20 for everything on that. If you do want to print any of the guide scopes seen in this, except for the SV165 from SV Boney, you buy those, then the link to my Thingiverse profile is down below in the video description. That's my profile where anything I upload goes onto, so you'll find the one you need in there. Go ahead, print it, and please let us know down below how you get on with it. I have also since added an alternative to the first one I showed you. That's the 9x50 lightweight. Not many people will want it on a 335mm dovetail bar, sorry. So I've done a version that will fit onto the Finder dovetail. So they're all available. You just supply your own lens. You could use the lens from a 9x50 Finder scope, use the lens from an SV165 if you have one of those, or one of these £12 lenses from eBay. If you're a 3D printer, you're probably familiar with the software involved, and therefore you could just adapt these to fit whatever lens you're able to buy. You're free to do so. Other than that, I would definitely recommend that you print these in PETG and not PLA, because of PLA's low tolerance to heat. Now, normally for me in Ireland, that's not an issue. All my gear lives in the observatory. It doesn't get hot, it doesn't get cold to any high degree, and they've been fine. But one of the scopes I printed in PLA earlier as a test print, I had out here in the baking sun while I was filming earlier today, and with the sun bouncing off my foil walls and everything, that seemed to amplify it, and it didn't noticeably warp, but the end where the camera goes in did close up slightly, enough to stop the camera going in there. So PLA will warp in high temperatures, but PETG gives you another 10-15 degrees Celsius on top, so much better to print your scopes with. Now, I think these things are brilliant. I'm sure some people would disagree, because they're just you know, 3D printed scopes instead of nice little metal ones that you buy from manufacturers. But I'd love to hear what you think on this. Is it a good idea? You going to do it yourself? Please let us know in the comments below. I do read and respond to everyone. And especially if you go off and print one for yourself, let us know how you get on with it. Come back to it and let us know. It would be much appreciated. As would dropping a like on the video. Here we go. So, that's all there is for this one. I will be back soon with another installment. You've been watching Cheapass-tro with me, Nugsy.